afternoon, I think. Really happy to be here. Imagine you're standing in front of a big, big mountain, the Mount Everest, and you're going to climb that mountain. It's a beautiful day, and you don't know exactly where to go. It all depends on your condition, on the weather, on the circumstances. There are 3 camps ahead: base camp, high camp, and in the end, the summit. To reach the top, everything needs to be right. Weather conditions, your training, and of course, all the circumstances in your team. But we're not here to talk about the Mount Everest. A little bit today. We're here to talk about cybersecurity. But taking that journey into cybersecurity is quite the same as climbing the Mount Everest. So I want to introduce you Mount Securist. You can see base camp, high camp, and summit as well. And it all depends on your goals, on your security posture, on the threat landscape. And also, for every camp, a plan is needed, a strategy is needed, and you need endurance. And in this rapidly changing threat landscape, you can imagine that this is essential. We have NIS2, we have geopolitical situations. We see still a rise in ransomware attacks and nation-state-sponsored attacks. So I want to take you along with the journey towards Mount Securist. Let's start our briefing. Before I start with the journey, I want to tell you a little bit more about the research. We have spoken to 30 CISOs and executives about that changing role of the CISO, because we have seen many publications about that changing role of the CISO. And what one of the main results is of our research, that there is not one journey and that there is not one CISO role. There are different, and it all depends on your destination. It all depends on your own journey, and it all depends on the CISO you have in the organization. Let's start with base camp Mount Everest. This is a critical part of the journey, and it is already quite a destination. First, you need to go to Sherpa's village, because you need a team around you with people that understand the circumstances, know the landscape, can read weather changes. And that Sherpa village is already at 3,440 meters. So it's already quite a journey to get there. Then it takes you about 5 days to get to base camp Mount Everest. Base camp Mount Everest is even higher. Around 40,000 people a year will take this journey. They will try to make base camp. And that is already quite a success. If you reach that, quite a success. To reach that, you need 6 months of training. You need a pretty good condition. And you need some skills, although not all the technical skills if you want to go higher. The same counts for base camp Mount Securist. Nearly everybody, every organization can reach base camp Mount Securist and needs to reach base camp Mount Securist. What is it exactly, and what is the role of the CISO? An organization that is targeting base camp is building really that foundational layer of security, setting down the governance of cybersecurity, really fill in that role of the CISO, and take first measures to make sure that they are compliant and that they can prevent incidents. These CISOs typically have a little bit more of a technical focus. And you see this back in sectors like manufacturing, logistics, or organization that are a little bit less mature. This asks for a foundational CISO. They lay down that initial security framework. They make sure that you have your technical measures in place. Think about patch management, monitoring, identity and access management, really making sure that from a technical perspective, you are protected and that you can ensure business continuity within your organization. These foundational CISOs are positioned in most cases on the IT. And they do have a link with the board, but decision making is really in a small community with CIOs and CFOs, and they have really one superpower. They are technical builders. Because of their technical background, they can truly understand what is necessary from a technical perspective. And we, as Nordwave, are Sherpas. We can guide you through this process, and in many cases are pretty happy if an organization already have this layer in place, because that means that you really embrace cybersecurity and make sure that you have business continuity if incidents happen and prevent yourself from incidents. But some organizations need more. Let's go to High Camp Mount Everest. Comparing the journey, Base Camp Mount Everest with High Camp Mount Everest is comparing apples and oranges. It is a completely different situations. Now technicals, climbing skills are in place. And you're already there on the level that oxygen plays a role. Your physics needs to be perfectly okay, and you need a great team around you that guides you through this process. This costs money, lots of money. And that's not different on High Camp Mount Securest. Here you also need a big team, and you can see that the security costs are even higher than on Base Camp. In these organizations that strive for this level of awareness and security, those are organizations that in many cases handle sensitive information. And only being compliant is not longer enough. You really need to get security in the culture of the organization. People truly need to understand the risk they face. And they need to understand what behavior of them is needed to make sure that they help your organization to protect itself against cyber threats. These organizations have a lot of digital tools, and those are fully integrated in the operations. And you see that the maturity of security is continuous development because of the ever-changing threat landscape and the changes you have in the organization. What you need, in this case, is transformational CISO. This is somebody who can really ensure a risk-based focus in the organization. And they really try to foster awareness and create a cyber-resilient environment with the help of all the people in the organization. And therefore, security becomes a responsibility of the whole organization. If you look at decision-making, in many cases, this is not only that small team as you saw at the foundational level. In many cases, decision-making around security is even decentralized. So departments can make their own decisions about cybersecurity that's needed for them to protect themselves. And also what you see is that they really focus on getting that awareness throughout the organization, getting that security mind throughout the organization. What I also see is that positioning. It's not longer a part of IT, what you see with the foundational CISO. In many cases, they are a partner of the CIO, and they have a direct link with the board. And here we see one superpower, and that is change management. These are people that are storytellers, that are influencers, have great communication skills, and can operate on an operational, tactical, and strategic level. In the research, we saw that 84.4% of the organizations aim or have a transformational CISO. That's quite a big number. And then some organizations need to reach the summit. Let's have a look at the summit of the Mount Everest. More than 8,800 meters. It's the dead zone. No oxygen. So people that are going towards the summit are people that continuously need to monitor the environment, monitor their teams, and monitor themselves. And you can imagine that extensive training is needed to reach this specific summit. And not only your own training, but also the training of the team, and external conditions play a really important role in reaching the summit. If there are avalanches or snowstorms, it really makes it harder to reach that summit, or even impossible. If we look at the summit of Mount Securest, there you see that the organization really have a strategic approach towards cybersecurity. It is an integral part of all their business goals. And what we see in these organizations, that they are highly digitalized. In many cases large, often corporate organizations, and they see security as an integral part of their business goals. So they use it really for innovation, they use it for enabling. And you cannot reach this summit with a really high level of security maturity. Digital organizations, critical sectors, and tech companies are examples of these kinds of organizations that want to reach the summit. The strategic CISO that's needed for this summit camp is continuously aligning security with the business goals. So you can imagine that they have perfect business insights. They speak the language of the board. They are continuously optimizing security processes, and they have an internal focus, can go through all the layers of the organization, but they also have a really broad external focus. Government, peers, other stakeholders, they continuously want to involve them as well and keep up with all the developments we see inside and outside the organization. Decision making is really collaborative. It's a thing of the full board, and security is an integral part of that. Positioning, of course, as part of that board. Many cases directly seated or invited when necessary. And they have one superpower. They are a security visionary. They have really an idea what is the goal of the organization, and they can translate that towards security and the other way around. As I mentioned before, there is not one destination that is the best. It all depends on your organization, your security posture, your goals as an organization, your ambition. And we try to get that conversation started. What is needed for your organization? There are some key enablers and key challenges that will help you in really getting that role into place in your organization towards a higher security posture. One, and that is no matter what destination. One, the role of the board. Every everyone we spoke to, but also in the quantitative research we held amongst almost 50 CISOs and executives, it became really clear. The CISO needs a direct line to the board to escalate or to give advice, asked and unasked. But also influence and engagement. A major challenge for many CISOs is that they are the reactive firefighter, only there when issues are happening. 40% of the CISOs report not actively being involved in shaping the organization's strategic objectives, and 31% feels insufficiently consulted by departments such as business operations, IT, finance, and HR. What we also saw is that when you have a direct line with the board, there's often resistance from the management layers below that. So making sure that you have the influence and the involvement of leadership in the organization is pretty relevant. Then third, CISO team and resources. You see that there is a huge difference between organizations. Some CISOs have a full team. Sometimes the CISO role is not even specifically dedicated to one person, but part of an overall job in IT. But if you want to be successful as a CISO, you need your resources. You need to be able to create your team and to get to a certain security posture. Then we also saw some other key challenges, enablers. We see, and that is also what Nicholas told earlier today, increasing digitalization. So more and more employees play a role in the security posture of your organization, but also knowledge gaps. We have spoken to many CISOs say, yeah, I understand the threat landscape pretty okay, but having that conversation with the board or with the rest of the organization is quite challenging. So bridging that knowledge gap is an issue. 50% of the respondents indicate that they lack a strong culture of information security. And then third, as always, balancing the measures between technology, organization, and people is always a challenge. And if you don't have the right people to talk with you about those challenges, it's even a harder one. And then it's also the condition of the CISO. We see in research that it is quite challenging to be a CISO or to have the CISO role as part of your task. The average tenure of a CISO is 26 months, 2 years and 2 months. 54% of the CISOs are open for new opportunities. 93% of the CISOs say that stress influences the decision to leave. And we see an overall shortage worldwide of 4 million security employees. And the demand is only growing. So you can imagine that already this gives a lot of stress to the CISO role. When we spoke to the interviewees about stress, they all indicated that they recognize that this job can be really stressful, but it does not apply to them. But when we did our quantitative research, we saw that all the answers came with a number of 4.98 out of 7 if we asked them a question about how is your workload. And 20% of the participants gave the highest score of 7. It's quite interesting that when we ask them, they say, "No, I don't have that much stress." But when we ask them in a more in an environment that was not that confronting, we saw that people just gave a pretty high score. And that is kind of similar we saw in a research before on the mental impact of ransomware incidents. It seems kind of taboo. there are different factors playing a role in stress. High workload, lack of autonomy. 42% of the CISOs experience a lack of autonomy. Not enough support, what I already said, that there's not always, indeed there is a direct line with the board, but there's resistance on the management layers below that. 40% of the CISOs report that they're feeling excluded from strategic decision making. There are not always clear expectations and communications, and work-life balance is sometimes challenging because you need to be on duty also after working hours, and that's not always well managed. So you can imagine that with that dynamic changing threat landscape and that dynamic changing environment combined with the elements that I just said, and the fact that the CISO role is quite new in the field, although it's already some decades old, but still quite new. It's not like a lawyer that's there for ages, that this can give a pretty heavy burden on a CISO. So what is our advice? Don't do this alone. Seek for help. The role of the CISO will continue to evolve because of that continuous changing environment, inside and outside. And the expectations of the role will increase. Only think about more regulations like NIS2. Our advice, don't do this alone. Seek for help. Make sure that you have a network around you. We as Nordwave can be the Sherpas. We know the pitfalls. We know the route. We know the weather conditions. But find somebody who can help you in this journey. And that you can start today. Because hopefully the comparison to a mountain can help you with the discussion. Where are you on your journey? Are you at base camp, high camp, or are you reaching the summit? And are you that foundational CISO, or maybe that transformational CISO, or strategic CISO? What are you aiming for? What needs the organization? And how can you get that conversation going? Only then you can make your climb towards cyber resilience. This was my message around the journey of the CISO. If you want to get in contact and read more about the research, it will be available just before Christmas. Scan the QR code. You can also find the threat landscape of Nordwave, but also our research around the mental impact of ransomware incidents. And if you want to contact me, please feel free to contact me via LinkedIn. Thank you so much.